As you learn to start taking care of yourself and protect you and your family, you start seeing the results. The effort you're putting out for your children is demonstrated by the quality of their life, the quality of their brain function, the quality of their body performance. You know that you're on the right track. But you've got to get educated by focusing on what triggers inflammation.
Welcome to the show. We're going to chat all about toxins, and we're just literally going to dive right in with your question of what is the big picture goal of what we can do with this for our health?
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great one. And what most people don't understand is that there is a gap between a healthy lifespan and a total lifespan. And it's getting worse. That in the last couple of decades, our lifespan has gone up a couple of years. You know, for women, the average female life expectancy is 82.8 years. But the healthy lifespan is 62.4 years, which means the last 20 years of a woman's life is with disabilities. They're not healthy anymore. You're in wheelchairs. You can't walk up the stairs. You've had a stroke, something. But that's the statistic today, that 24% of a woman's life, the last 2 decades of her life, are not healthy. And when you look at these statistics from the World Health Organization and you say, what? Then you think about your aunts, your neighbors, and how many of them are on medications and they're limited in their mobility. You say, well, yeah, I know a lot of elder women that aren't doing great. Nobody talks about this. And it's what you do in your middle years when you start to wake up that sets the stage for how your body functions in your senior years. If you keep having this low-grade inflammation under the surface and you keep saying, I feel fine, quote, fine, but you've got this inflammation going on that's not immobilizing you right now, by definition, excess low-grade inflammation is killing off cells. You're killing off more cells than you're making. And accumulatively over time, it adds up. And all of a sudden, you're no longer able to dance with your granddaughter at her wedding or, whatever it should be. And people don't realize they're not looking at this low-grade inflammation. They're looking at how do they feel. And that's not quite, but almost irrelevant to your long-term health. How you feel today, because we can take some extra adaptogenic herbs that jumpstart our system. You can take some ashwagandha, or you can take a different form of coenzyme Q10, or you can take added vitamin C. You feel a little better, which is great. It's great. But if you're still living the lifestyle that's stimulating your immune system, trying to protect you, causing the inflammation, killing off cells. The result is by the time you're in your 60s, most women they've lost the healthy lifespan. Now they've got this left in their lifespan that's with disabilities.
That's depressing.
Yes. It's like, wake up.
Yeah, it's crazy. I imagine, though, and we're going to get into this, that when you get rid of the inflammation, you also are going to feel amazing. So,
like $1 million, but you never get rid of the inflammation. Never. You reduce the sources of inflammation. Your inflammation is just your immune system activated trying to protect you. So the question is, what is it trying to protect you from? And if you've got mold in your house, you can do the keto diet. You can take extra protein, 1 gram per pound body weight, and you're feeling better, but you're killing off brain cells because you're breathing mold every day.
Yeah.
And your brain is going down. It doesn't matter what the trigger is. What we all have to begin to learn is to identify the triggers of inflammation that are activating your immune system, trying to protect you, that are going on right now. And when you understand, this is basic 101. Every doctor should be talking about this with every one of their patients. But they're so focused on reducing the symptoms the person comes in with, which is a good thing. Of course, it's necessary. But they don't take the time, or they haven't set up the educational system in their office with videos or discussion groups so that people understand there's one mechanism for long-term health, and that is reduce the triggers of inflammation in your life.
Yeah. Well, not the women that listen to this podcast, because they're obviously looking for health, but I would say that the majority, when you go to the doctor with your symptoms, they want something to get rid of their symptoms. They're not like, oh, I would like to do a lifestyle overhaul to feel better. So I think sometimes, we need to be ready and open to looking for it as well. So where, I don't know if you want to list them off, but what are the environmental toxins that we would have, that we basically are causing inflammation in our body? Where should we start?
Good question. The most common source of environmental triggers activating your immune system is what's on the end of your fork. That's most common. There are many others, of course, but this is most. You think chemtrails are harmless? We're breathing that every day. You think that, Mrs. Patient, if you go on holiday, you go on vacation, when you come home after a week or two, do you have to open all the windows to air the house out? Oh, yeah. That's mold. Wake up. Wake up. Your family's breathing that 24/7. But the most common source is what's on the end of your fork. I'll give you an example, if I may. Professor Alessio Fasano is a professor of medicine, Harvard Medical School, the professor of nutrition, Harvard School of Public Health, the chief of pediatric gastroenterology at Mass General at Harvard, the director of the Celiac Research Center at Harvard, the director of Mucosal Immunology Center, that's the lining of your lungs, the lining of your brain, the lining of your gut, at Harvard. He's got 5 titles. Any one title is a lifelong dream for someone at the top of their field. He's got 5. We think he's going to win the Nobel Prize. We truly do, because it was him and his team that identified in 1997 the mechanism that causes this thing we call leaky gut. And for the last 25 years or more, they've been publishing leaky gut and pancreatic function, leaky gut and brain, leaky gut and cancer, leaky gut and kidney disease, leaky gut and sarcopenia, loss of muscle, leaky gut and osteoporosis, that they have demonstrated without question that the gateway in the development of chronic inflammatory diseases is through the leaky gut. We think he's going to win the Nobel Prize. And he's always so careful of what he says so that he's not misquoted, and he's a great educator. And reading his research papers, they're easy to follow. They're very technical sometimes, but it's easy to follow his line of thinking. And he's always so careful of what he says. And you look at any of the 350 papers that are published by him and his teams, you'll see 6 people as the authors of the paper, and the last one, Alessio Fasano, the stamp of approval to the paper. This paper he wrote by himself, which gives you a sense of the importance of this paper and the message that he's wanting to get out. The title of the paper, and anyone can Google it and download the paper, All Disease Begins in the, quote, Leaky Gut. The role of the protein zonulin, which is the protein that causes leaky gut, the role of the protein zonulin in the development of chronic inflammatory diseases. Now, 14 of the 15 top causes of death, according to the CDC, are chronic inflammatory diseases. And here we have this incredible researcher at Harvard saying all disease begins in the leaky gut. And he talks about the perfect storm. in the development of chronic inflammatory diseases. There are 5 factors in the perfect storm. And when you understand this, you understand the 5 factors, then you know how to move forward in your life with staying healthy and getting optimal health back again. Factor number 1, genetics. You have the gene for Alzheimer's, you can't get rid of the gene. You have the gene for breast cancer, you can't get rid of the gene. But there is no evidence that carrying the gene means you're getting the disease. There are a few diseases, about 25% of diseases. Yeah, if you got the gene for cystic fibrosis, we don't know how to stop that gene from expressing itself. But if you have the gene for Alzheimer's, or you have the gene for breast cancer, or any of the other genes, Mrs. Patient, you pull at a chain, it always breaks at the weakest link. Always. It's going to be at one end, the middle, the other end. It's your heart, your brain, your liver, your kidneys. Wherever your weak link is, that's where the chain's going to break. And that weak link is determined by your genetics and how you live your life. Meaning, it's called antecedents, how you live your life. You eat tuna fish 2-3 times a week, you likely have mercury toxicity because almost all the tuna in the world has mercury in it. And mercury accumulates in many areas of your body, but especially your brain. So your brain may be the weak link. And if you have the gene for Alzheimer's along with mercury, that's a much weaker link. Well, the pull on the chain is always the same. The pull on the chain is inflammation. So number 1 of the 5 pillars is genetics. That's the deck of cards you were dealt. Doesn't mean it's going to express itself. You just can't pull on the chain so hard. Number 2, environmental triggers that turn your genes on or turn your genes off. And wrong language, I'm sorry, on my part. It's so burned in my brain. We all say turn genes on and off. You can't turn genes off. You can't. But genes operate on dimmer switches, so you can dim them down, right? That's the secret to success, is dimming down the genes of your vulnerabilities, and that strengthens the link. So number 2 are the environmental triggers, and that means what we eat, what we breathe, what we think, and the stress hormones that are produced, the heavy metals that have accumulated inside our body already, that's an environmental trigger. The plastics, the chemicals that are in our body, those are environmental triggers. But the category, number 2, is environmental triggers. They activate your immune system. Number 3 of the 5 pillars, when you have inflammatory environmental triggers, you change the balance of the good guys and the bad guys in the gut. And so as the technical term is dysbiosis. And all that means is too many bad guys, not enough good guys in the gut. Now, 36% of all the small molecules in your bloodstream are the exhaust of the bacteria in your gut. Over 1/3 of everything. If I exercise too hard and the next day my muscles sore, we know that's lactic acid. I just made more lactic acid than my body can get rid of. Drink some water, you'll be fine. You'll be fine in a day or two, right? It's the exhaust of muscle cells. The exhaust of your bacteria in the gut get into your bloodstream. It makes up 1/3 of all the small molecules in the bloodstream, 36%, just over 1/3. Why? Because they're the messengers that turn your genes up or turn your genes down. So when you have too much exhaust of bad guys in your gut, the messengers in the bloodstream turn up the genes of inflammation, and you get more inflammation. And when you work on your gut and get a healthy gut, you turn down those genes, and the dominance of messages coming from the bacteria in your gut are anti-inflammatory. Calm down, relax. So that's why the title of his article is All Disease Begins in the Gut. So number 3 is dysbiosis. Too many bad guys, not enough good guys. Number 4, Mrs. Patient, your digestive system is a tube. It goes from your mouth to the other end. It's one big long tube. The inside of the tube is lined with cheesecloth, which means when you eat food, you take a bite of a hamburger, that clump of meat can't get into your bloodstream. It's got to go through the stomach, into the intestines. And if you think of a pearl necklace, proteins are like a pearl necklace. The acid in your stomach undoes the clasp of the pearl necklace. Now you have a string of pearls. And the enzymes act as scissors to cut that pearl necklace smaller, snip, 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 until you're down to each pearl of the pearl necklace. That's called an amino acid. And the amino acids are the building blocks for new brain cells and muscle cells and heart cells and bone cells. We use these amino acids to build new tissue. And the amino acids can go right through the cheesecloth into the bloodstream. That's how we absorb our nutrients. But the clumps of meat, in this example, the clumps of the pearl necklace can't get through the cheesecloth. They've got to be snipped down smaller and smaller and smaller until they're small enough to go right through the cheesecloth. But when you've got dysbiosis, too many bad guys in the gut, not enough good guys, you activate this inflammation in your gut, and the inflammation in your gut tears the cheesecloth. When you tear the cheesecloth, that's leaky gut. And these bigger clumps of molecules get into your bloodstream before they've been snipped down small enough to get through the cheesecloth. They're not bad molecules, but they just haven't been broken down yet small enough. But they slip through the tears in the cheesecloth. They're called macromolecules, big molecules. Now they're in the bloodstream, and your bloodstream's just a highway. You know, all the traffic's going in the same direction, but it's just a highway. And now that's number 4 is the leaky gut with these macromolecules getting through into the bloodstream. Now your brain says, what is that? That's not something I can use to make new bone cells. I better fight that. Immune system, fight that. Now you activate the immune system to fight that clump of meat, because big clumps of meat got through into the bloodstream, and they're really, really tiny, but still they're too big to get through the cheesecloth. But now they got through the tears in the cheesecloth, and your immune system now creates systemic inflammation in the bloodstream to fight the beef. Now you do a blood test looking for food sensitivities, and you're allergic to 20 different foods. Well, of course it is. Your immune system's trying to protect you. And that systemic inflammation is the pull on the chain that manifests at the weak link in the chain. Here comes your cognitive decline. Oh, I'm getting old. I don't remember the way I used to. Haha. How old are you? Well, I'm 38. No, that's not supposed to happen. That's inflammation in the memory center of your brain. Blue Cross Blue Shield published a study in February of 2020. And they said, we've got a real problem here. But no one paid attention to it. It should have been on the front page of every paper in the country. But that's when the virus came out. So no one paid attention to it. But what they showed was in the previous 4 years, there was a 407% increase, not 10%, not 20%, not 100%, 407% in 4 years in the diagnosis of Alzheimer's in 30 to 44-year-olds.
That's insane.
And this is Blue Cross. They're just interested in profit. And they're saying, this is going to bankrupt us. We better do something. So now, if you're a young person and you get health insurance with Blue Cross, many of their policies have riders. They're not going to cover Alzheimer's because it'll bankrupt the company. A 407% increase in 4 years in the diagnosis of early Alzheimer's in 30 to 44-year-olds. Because for 20 or 30 years, they've had this systemic inflammation going on, killing off brain cells, killing off brain cells, killing off brain cells, while they felt fine, or they thought they were fine, because they don't look for the inflammation that's not strong enough to make them sick. That's the big kahuna. All disease begins in the gut, and it's systemic inflammation that's pulling on the chain, wherever your genetic weak link is with your antecedents, how you live your life. That's where your symptoms are going to happen. And for women, for your tribe, the people that follow you, the last 2 decades of your life are with disabilities, because no one ever told you this. This is what everyone needs to study and learn. How is my immune system trying to protect me right now? Why is it producing this inflammation? So first, do I have the inflammation? You have to do the right tests. Do I have the inflammation? And then why do I have this inflammation? Where are the environmental triggers coming from? You don't take anti-inflammatories to try to shut down the inflammation. Of course you do for a short period of time. If you're suffering, take something to feel better, but you're not suffering because of a deficiency of the anti-inflammatory. So take it to feel better, but also explore, where is the inflammation coming from that's making it that I've got to take 2 Advil when I get up in the morning or before I go play tennis. Doc, if I take Advil before I play tennis, I feel great afterwards. Wake up. Wake up.
Yeah, it's always crazy when people are like, well, I can survive if I just take aspirin or Midol. And I'm like, well, your body's not deficient in Midol. So it's not really the answer.
And there's nothing wrong with taking Midol for a short period of time. There's nothing wrong with feeling better and functioning better, but you have to recognize your link is breaking. Mm-hmm. And you can't just shut off the message, the inflammation. Yeah. Of course you want to feel better. Of course you do. But where is the inflammation coming from? And it's so very common. I only see one new patient maybe a week, maybe every 2 weeks, because I travel the world teaching, so I don't have a lot of time. But when people have been everywhere and done everything, and they hear of us or they want to work with it, they have to get through my staff. And I want to see the last 5 years of tests before I ever talk to them. And I want them to do a few tests before I ever talk to them, because then our time is really used well, because they're in shock. They say, what? Because when you do a couple of tests, when you do the total tox burden and see how many toxins have accumulated in your body, like bisphenol A, that's an endocrine disruptor and contributes dramatically to hormone-related problems, or heavy metals, or mold, and you see these organophosphates, these chemicals that have accumulated in your body. Well, I don't get exposed to chemicals. The phthalates, chemicals used to mold plastic, in nail polish, that's what makes nail polish hard. Those phthalates are in your bloodstream in 4 minutes. Now, there's no evidence that the amount of phthalates that leach from nail polish into your bloodstream, that amount is toxic to humans. There's no evidence. And that's how they got away with this, how the chemical industry got away with this. Because you have to show it's toxic to the amount you're exposed to in 24 hours is toxic to humans. There's no evidence of that. Or when you store leftover food in a plastic storage container in the refrigerator, and the next day the chicken's got phthalates in it from the plastic container. There's no evidence that the amount of phthalates that leach out of plastic containers into your food is toxic to humans. That's how they got away with it. And they pay off the senators and the representatives to pass legislation that has no teeth. But when you do the test and you say, I'm loaded in bisphenol A and I'm suffering from endometriosis, and wow, and here's the studies on how these chemicals can contribute to endometriosis. Well, how do we get this stuff out? That's the kind of question you ask. And then you learn how to detox, how to reduce your exposures. You get organic nail polish, phthalate free, and then go to town. You get glass storage containers for the kitchen. Give the Tupperware to your husband to store nails in the garage. You do these little things that accumulatively reduce your exposure while you detox to get this stuff out. And all of a sudden, in 6 months, your fibrocystic breasts are gone. They're just gone. Your body reabsorbed all that crud and got it out of there. That's the kind of approach to healthcare that extends total healthy lifespan. And that's what you want, is to extend your healthy lifespan so it's really close to your total lifespan and you're not suffering for decades.
Yeah. I do think that test is really cool, the total tox panel. What I think is really interesting in all of this is I think there's a lot of people out there that are like, I'm going to die someday, so I'm going to, do whatever. I'm like, yeah, we are. What I'm more concerned about is playing with my grandkids or all of that. I think that's where we aren't pulling all of the pieces together, because we're just like, oh, I want to drink this coffee this way, or I want my hairspray to do whatever. And we aren't thinking about the long-term effects, because like you said, you're not feeling sick enough right in this moment to want to make that change. But, those things build up over time, which can really be crazy.
I call that the hopelessness factor, that they've talked to their doctors and the doctors say, well, you're just getting a little older. And so they feel hopeless. So they rationalize, well, I'm going to have my venti latte pumpkin with whipped cream, whatever, that because they don't know that the quality of life can be enhanced. Look, I'm 72. I have a 3-year-old. My goal is that I can shake it up on the dance floor at his wedding. Now that's going to be at least 25 years from now. So I'm going to be 95 on the dance floor. That doesn't happen unless you are taking care of yourself, right? So and during all that time, the quality of our life is great. It's really, we're very grateful. When you learn this stuff, you feel better than you've felt in years, literally. You take the emergency brakes off. When you back up out of a driveway and you say, what's wrong with this car? It's barely moving. Oh, the emergency brake. And you let go of the emergency brake and all of a sudden you go, fine. That's your body right now. You've got emergency brakes that you just haven't identified. And when you take those off, wow, I feel so much better than I did 2 months ago. Wow, it was hard to walk for 20 minutes. Now I'm walking an hour and a half a day at a much faster clip, or whatever it is that you're doing, right? You just don't know how good you can feel.
Yeah, until you're there, because you've been dealing with this for so long. Can you give us some areas of where they should start looking to reduce environmental toxins and kind of just reduce environmental load? I know you did nail polish and plastics. I think those are definitely really big ones, but where else can they look?
Yeah. Well, I spent literally a year, traveling the world, 7 different countries, 64 experts, world experts to talk on this topic, all about inflammation. David Furman, who runs the research center at the Buck Institute, he has a contract with NASA to look at why are our astronauts aging so quickly in space. And it's always inflammation, always. And NASA financed the studies because their astronauts were going a little loopy in space. They never talk about it with the press. They were like, what? What did he just say? And they found out it was because of the air in the shuttles. There was too many phthalates in the air and other chemicals from being inside this closed, mechanically loaded environment of materials outgassing into the air. You have plastic shades on your window, they're outgassing phthalates into the air 24/7. Well, there's no evidence that the amount of phthalates that leach out of plastic blinds is toxic to humans. That's how they get away with it. But, my air is fine. Really? You ever see the sun coming through the window? And at that angle, you see the sun rays and you see all the dust in the air? That's what you're breathing. And that stuff is what's in the room. The phthalates and the mold spores and the flame retardant chemicals from your sofa or from your bed sheets, the sheets and the blankets you use that are soaked in flame retardant chemicals. There's no evidence that the amount of flame retardant chemicals that leach out of your sheets and blankets and you absorb in 24 hours is toxic to humans. But all of this stuff accumulates in your body. So I interviewed all of these scientists who were publishing I read their research and I went looking for them and I sat down and I talked to them and all of them say the same thing. It's the pull on the chain that causes disease. 14 of the 15 top causes of death, according to the CDC, are chronic inflammatory diseases. Always, without exception. The only one that's not is unintentional injuries. Everything else, is chronic inflammation. You don't get disease unless you have chronic inflammation. And nobody thinks like this. So I interviewed all of these experts around the world, and we put it together in this docuseries called The Inflammation Equation. This is the equation. This is how you understand all of this technical data, right? And it's free. And it's 45 minutes a day for 9 days. It's all free. And when you watch this, you say, oh, well, that just makes sense. And I asked the questions of the experts of where are the sources of this? Where does it come from? So, I of course will answer your questions, anything you want to know, but I'm not going to tell people just get glass storage containers and organic nail polish, you're fine. What I want people to do is take the time to begin to understand this concept, spend about an hour a week looking at this, and within 6 months, you've changed your life. You've completely changed your life because you go to church and someone hasn't seen you in a while and say, wow, you look great. What happened to you? Well, I found out the foods that my immune system was fighting. I got those out of my diet. I got glass storage containers in the kitchen. I use organic nail polish and cosmetics. And I've got organic shampoo in the bathroom, organic soaps. And my daughter's asthma is gone. My son's attention deficit's in remission. The teacher said that the new medication we're using is working really well. And I said, we're not using any medication. We put him on a gluten-free diet. And that changed his brain function. And you start to see these results again and again and again, without exception. Once you identify the environmental triggers, number 2 in Fasano's 5, and this is what they're teaching at Harvard Medical School right now, is the 5 pillars in development of disease. Once you identify the environmental triggers, both inside your body already and outside your body, and you reduce those, within a few months, your body, you feel so much better. You feel like you're 10 years younger, 15 years younger. And the person at church says, wow, if you lost weight, well, yeah, I'm actually down 2 dress sizes. And I didn't count calories. I just got rid of the foods that was causing the inflammation and all the puffiness, water retention I had. At nighttime, when you put on your sleeping stuff, if you've got an elastic band around your waist from your underwear, you take your underwear off, you got an elastic band there, or your socks, you've got the sock marks, that's edema. Edema, now it could be too tight underwear, but most people aren't walking around with really tight underwear, although some people are called a tight ass, excuse me, but, that's edema. And you say, wow, that's water retention. Okay. And you get those foods out of there, you start losing weight pretty quickly without trying, because you're not throwing the toxins into your body, and your body's holding more water to dilute the toxicity of that particular food that in your body is a problem. So that's the inflammation equation. That's the event where you've got these world experts trying to explain in everyday language where all this is coming from. It's overwhelming. But we give you the handout from NASA. Here are the houseplants that absorb 2 6-inch houseplants in a 10 by 10 room absorb 74% of the toxins in the air within 24 hours. So you put houseplants in every child's bedroom, in your kitchen, in your bathroom, in your living room. And if people say, oh, I don't have a green thumb, they're going to die. Then you buy more. You clean the air, right?
I just have to laugh. I kill plants. It's not that I don't have a green thumb. I have like a black thumb. We'll be rotating through a lot of plants.
Yes. But it saves your child's brain when you see the science of what these low levels of chemicals that you're inhaling on a daily basis inside your house. Let me give you an example. Chicago, 2016, 346 pregnant women in the 8th month of pregnancy. They collected urine from them, and they measured 5 different phthalates, the chemicals used to mold plastic, including BPA. They put the results into 4th, the lowest amount of phthalates in the urine, the next, the 3rd, and the highest. They followed the offspring of those pregnancies for 7 years. And when the children turned 7 years old, they did Wechsler IQ tests on them, the official IQ test. There's not much in medicine that's all or every. This was every. Every child whose mother was in the highest category of phthalates in urine in pregnancy, compared to the children whose mothers were in the lowest category, every child in the highest category, their IQ was 7 points lower than these other kids, 6.7 to 7.4 points lower. That doesn't mean anything to anyone until you understand a 1-point difference in IQ is noticeable. A 7-point difference is a difference between a child working really hard, getting straight A's in school, and a child working really hard, really working, getting straight C's. This child doesn't have a chance in hell of ever excelling, ever. Now just Google phthalates and neurogenesis, brain cell growth. Here come the studies. The higher the phthalates, the more inhibition of brain cell development. Because mom was accumulating phthalates from drinking out of plastic bottles, from using nail polish, from using Tupperware, from all the different exposures over a lifetime that's accumulated in her body. And those moms in the highest category, their babies' brains don't develop properly. When you read the science, it's jaw-dropping to read this science. Jaw-dropping. So every woman of childbearing age needs to understand this, and they need to detox before they ever get pregnant. You never detox when you're pregnant, never. But you detox before you get pregnant. And it takes about 6 months to 2 years, depending on how toxic you are. You just have to do the test to see how much crud has accumulated in your body in your life so far.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to take a momentary pause here as a mom to talk to all of the other moms that are having a panic attack right now. When you know better, you do better. So, it's one of those things where right now, or maybe in the past, you didn't know, but now you're listening to this podcast and you're like, okay. And it can be really easy to go back to your kids that you already have and just be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I blah, 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 blah. You were doing the best with the tools that you had. And now going forward. So I think it can be really easy to get caught up in guilt with that. And I want you to release that, we're going to change things going forward because now we know better. And then there's also tools that you can also bring in for your kids to support that as well. Like maybe you find out, your kids need help detoxing with whatever. So I think that's important as a mom.
You're absolutely right. And the really good news is the sooner you look at the inflammatory triggers in your children, the quicker their bodies and functions start to turn around. Until a person is between 24 and 28 years old, they have the opportunity to develop younger, stronger, healthier cells. You will be startled at how much change you have in your children within a year of approaching, let's reduce the inflammation in their body, and what are some safe ways to pull the toxins out that have accumulated in their body so far. You'll be startled and proud of how they're functioning in ways you never could have imagined. So I just wanted to add that to your very clear message to them.
Yeah, I think it's crazy. Like we see kids and we're like, they're so hyper or they can't focus or they just run around like crazy people. And I'm like, well, there's a lot you want to look into in terms of your environments. But my question is about plants because like black thumb over here, which I'll become a green thumb, like I'm just going to have plants that are living their best life. Are there specific types of plants that you should be bringing in? I'm thinking like kids' rooms, like is there a certain number you should have, a certain size, a certain type?
Yeah. You can go to my website, thedr.com/plant and download the handout from NASA. The pictures are there of all the plants. It's all there, and we give it to everyone who attends the inflammation equation, so that you get all this information. It's all free. It's all free. I want to change the paradigm. That's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm here today. Is that I want to encourage people to be exposed to the information so that they start thinking differently. Because when you start thinking differently, you start acting differently. You're more selective. I never get in an Uber if he's got one of those little smelly things hanging from the rearview mirror. You never get in there. And sometimes it's really frustrating because, I've been flying all day and now I'm in Milan and at the airport and I call for the Uber. The guy comes. I'm tired. I want to get to the hotel and get some sleep. And he pulls up and I can see it hanging from the rear. Oh, no. And so then, they open the door and I say, I'm sorry, you've got one of those toxic, smelly things. I can't get in your car. I'm sorry. I need to cancel and get another car. Then you have to wait the 10 to 20 minutes for another one, right? Or when I check into a hotel, you've been flying all day. You finally get to the hotel, you check in, go with your roller bag, you go up the elevator, you get to the room, open the door. I leave the bag out there. I take one step in and I go, no, because so many hotel rooms they're moldy. And then I go back downstairs. I'm sorry, I need a different room. There's a mold smell in that room. And they always accommodate because they know. They try to, pass it on. It's not a big deal. It's just a little mold, not a big deal. As you learn to start taking care of yourself and protect you and your family, you start seeing the results. And sometimes it makes you angry at how toxic this world is and how people just don't know what they're doing is making your family more toxic. They just don't know. You go to a soccer game and mom brings these little cupcakes and these juice boxes that are loaded with sugar and artificial colorings and flavorings. And you see your kid wanting a cupcake. What are you going to do? Some moms will, after once or twice this happening, they bring the cupcakes or they bring the juice box for their kids. Yeah. That you've got to protect your kids from the moms that just don't know. And you can't proselytize to the moms because they think you're a nutcase and they don't want to hear it, right? So you protect your family. You learn how to protect your family. And then at night, you and your husband sit back and go, it's really a pain in the butt to be doing this. But look at how little Stevie just did in school. Look at his report card. Or look at how he's doing soccer or whatever. You're so proud to see the effort you're putting out for your children is being demonstrated by the quality of their life and the quality of their brain function, the quality of their body performance. You're just proud and you know that you're on the right track. But you've got to get educated in order to do this. And this is the 101. This is the way you get educated on all of this stuff. Is by focusing on what triggers inflammation. And when you focus on that, it doesn't matter if your best friend found a vitamin D that tastes better. And it doesn't matter that you know that there's so much sugar in that kid's vitamin D product that it's not great. And so you will find the vitamin D that works for you and your family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One step at a time. So we're going to put the link to the docuseries in the show notes so people can join and do that and learn all of the things. Do you have any lasting thoughts that you want to share or one thing you want people to focus on today?
When I interviewed Fran Drescher, the nanny, Fran had uterine cancer and she's a 24-year survivor. And she said, I asked my oncologist, why did I get this? And she said, we don't know. It just happens. And Fran said, I didn't believe that. And I decided to devote my fame not to raising money for cancer research, but to raise awareness of the triggers of cancer. And she founded Cancer Schmancer. It's a New York Times bestselling book she wrote, but also she has conferences twice a year. I've been privileged to speak there many times. To talk about the triggers. It's always the environment. So Fran, when you register for the event, we give you the gift right away of the full 1-hour interview with Fran. It's right there. And I said, Fran, you're the only other person I know other than me. And she, uh-oh. And you start laughing just by her Bronx voice, or whatever that accent is. I said, when we rang the doorbell here at your beautiful home, your staff opened the door and they greeted us warmly. I couldn't come into your house until I put those little hospital blue booties on my shoes. And she started her laugh, right? And she said, my neighbors use weed killer to keep the dandelions off their lawn. And then their sprinklers have some of the water go onto the sidewalk. You walk on the sidewalk, now there's weed killer on your shoes. You walk into my house and walk on my carpet, now there's weed killer on my carpet. And my little doggy walks around and gets weed killer on his paws. My doggy's not going to get cancer. And Fran just talks, and then she looks right in the camera and she says, you start with what's in your body, what you put on your body, and what's around your body. And she talked about toothpaste. Every mother should go get, as soon as you're done listening to this, go get the toothpaste out of the medicine cabinet and read it. Most of them say, warning, do not swallow. If swallowed, call National Poison Control Center. Now, you think I'm exaggerating? I'm not. I've been giving my child this toothpaste for years because it tastes good, and they'll brush their teeth. But it's a poison. And you start learning all of these little things, and you see how you've been duped by the industry to expose yourself and your family to these things. So my message is just get educated, just take a little bit of time, 1 hour a week, and just learn a little bit more and a little bit more. And in 6 months, the results are obvious.
Yeah, that's such a good message. I also make people take their shoes off. I'm like, you can walk in your socks. I'm sorry.
Right.
Oh, that's crazy. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this.
You're very welcome.